The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Roddy. Alderman Todd. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. Mr. President.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Roddy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. 18 present.
Quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We dispense with line item 3, introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? You need to, you sit over, you sit over there. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from 14th.
I'd like to have as my honored guests Demetrius Alfred and Nathan Lett from Firefighters Local 73.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to introduce as my special guests Jim Lang and Mr. Searcy. Thank you.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? I'd like to also just send a very special congratulations out to the daughter of my cousin Ronnie Robinson and the stepdaughter of Dee Dee on her graduation today. She's graduating from college in Huntsville, Alabama. She asked me to send a special thank you out to Cardinal Ritter College Prep and its alumni for all of their support. Let's give Cardinal Ritter and also Brianna a big round of applause. Congratulations, Brianna. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from 10th, you recognize, wraps up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Today is May the 3rd. It was on this day in 1921 the first sales tax by West Virginia was introduced in the United States. And also in 1966 the game Twister was introduced, which I'm sure some of us have delved in. But more importantly, this is National Tuba Day, which really means nothing. But tomorrow, this is the eve of the holiday we all look forward to, Star Wars Day, because tomorrow is May the 4th be with you. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 10th, you recognized on approval of the minutes.
We're in trouble when I'm the oldest guy on the floor down here. Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the minutes for the meetings of April 15th, April 16th, and April 26th.
Moved by the Alderman from the 10th, entertain a second on the motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in the aldermen's mailboxes.
Alderman from the 20. Please proceed, Madam Clerk. Please proceed.
Oh. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Central West End North Special Business District. The reappointment of Mr. Henry Edmonds, who resides in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2020. The reappointment of Mr. Sam Copler, whose business is in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Fred Ricks, who resides in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. James Dwyer, who resides in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of the reappointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from 28th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Central West End Special Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we approve the mayor's appointments to the Central West End North Special Business District.
Moved by the Alderman from 28th, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment and reappointment to the Industrial Development Authority Board of Directors. The appointment of Mr. David Weber, whose term will expire May 11, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Gary Reed, whose term will expire May 11, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Gilberto Pinella, whose term will expire May 11, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Greg Shapiro, whose term will expire May 11, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Vincent Young, whose term will expire on May 11, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Troy Doles, whose term will expire May 11, 2023. I respectfully request your approval of the appointments and reappointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Industrial Development Authority Board of Directors.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to approve the mayor's appointments to the IDA board.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Soulard Special Business District Board. The reappointment of Mr. James Rick, who resides in the 7th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Luke Reynolds, who resides in the 7th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. William McClendon, Esquire, who resides in the 7th Ward, whose term will expire December 31st, 2021. The reappointment of Ms. Molly Daughtery, who resides in the 7th Ward and whose terms will end December 31st, 2020. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Soulard Special Business District Board.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to approve the mayor's appointments to the Soulard SBD.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for the appointment to the Convention and Visitors Commission. The appointment of Ms. Deona Simbret, who resides in the 18th Ward, whose term will expire November 22nd, 2019. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Convention and Visitors Commission. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Convention and Visitors Commission. Would you like to make a motion to approve the mayor's appointment?
Mr. President, Board of Aldermen, I make a motion to move to appoint Senior Owner Simbret.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 7th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Port Authority Commission. The reappointment of Mr. Matthew McBride, who resides in the 6th Ward and whose term will expire on November 22nd, 2022. The reappointment of Ms. Tanya Mason, who resides in the 28th Ward, and whose term will expire on November 22nd, 2022. The reappointment of Ms. Joan Miller, who resides in the 26th Ward, and whose term will expire on November 22nd, 2020. I respectfully request your approval of the appointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, Mayor.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Port Authority Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we refer these appointments to the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 6th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 15th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please assign that the mayor's appointment to the Port Authority Commission. Sorry.
Got it. So noted.
Yeah. All right.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Central West End South Special Business District. The appointment of Ms. Wendy Tim, who is fulfilling the unexpired term of Mr. James Shipman, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. The appointment of Mr. Bruce Mays, with a term ending December 31st, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, Mayor.
Alderman from the 28th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Central West End South Special Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we approve the mayor's appointments to the Central West End South Special Business District.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 28th, seconded by the Alderman from the 6th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I have the pleasure to submit, dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment and reappointment to the Euclid South Community Improvement District. The appointment of Mr. Josh Udelhofen, who resides in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire January the 8th, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Brian Phillips, whose business is in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on June 30th, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. John McElwin, who resides in the 17th Ward and whose term will expire on June 30th, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment and reappointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, Mayor.
Alderman from the 28th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Euclid South Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we approve the mayor's appointments to the Euclid South Community Improvement District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 28th, seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment and reappointment to the Shoto Crossing Community Improvement District. The appointment of Ms. Elizabeth Austin, a resident of St. Louis County and whose term will expire on January the 6th, 2022. The appointment of Ms. Nicole Blumner, a resident of the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on January the 6th, 2022. The appointment of Mr. Ron Cross, a resident of St. Louis County, whose term will expire on January the 6th, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Brian Pratt, a resident of St. Louis County, whose term will expire on January the 6th, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Philip Holst, a resident of St. Louis County, whose term will expire on January the 6th, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of the appointments and reappointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, Mayor.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on the mayor's appointments to the Shoto Crossing Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept the mayor's appointments to the Shoto Crossing Community Improvement District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 6th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. In discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the Tower Grove South Concerned Citizens Special Business District. The appointment of Mr. David Allen, who resides in the 15th Ward, whose term will expire December 31st, 2022. The appointment of Ms. Catherine Shackelford, who resides in the 15th Ward, fulfilling an unexpired term of Tanya Anderson, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. I respectfully request your approval of the appointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, Mayor.
Alderman from the 15th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Tower Grove South Concerned Citizens Special Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move to approve the mayor's appointments to the Tower Grove South Concerned Citizens Special District Board.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 15th, and seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment and reappointment to the Residence Inn Downtown Community Improvement District. The appointment of Mr. Gregory Creeth, who resides in St. Louis County and whose term will expire on March 8th, 2023. The appointment of Ms. Deanna Bester, who resides in Belleville, Illinois, whose term will expire on March 8th, 2023. The appointment of Mr. Chris Hilton, who resides in the 6th Ward and whose term will expire on March 8th, 2021. The reappointment of Ms. Laura Lashley, who resides in St. Charles County and whose term will expire on March 8th, 2023. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments and reappointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, and Mayor.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Residence Inn Downtown Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we accept the mayor's appointments to the Downtown Residence Inn SID.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 6th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment and reappointment to the 840 East Taylor Community Improvement District. The appointment of Ms. Elizabeth Austin, a resident of St. Louis County, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. The appointment of Ms. Nicole Blumner, a resident of the 28th Ward, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. The appointment of Mr. Ryan Cross, a resident of St. Louis County, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Brian Pratt, a resident of St. Louis County, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Philip Holst, a resident of St. Louis County, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. I respectfully request your appointments and reappointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, and Mayor.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the 840 East Taylor Community Improvement District.
Board, I move to approve the mayor's appointment to the 840 East Taylor SID.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That is the extent of office of the mayor.
Do you have
The following board bill was signed by the mayor. Board Bill 175, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderman Coatar, and the ordinance number is 70930.
Is that the extent?
That is the extent of office of the mayor.
We will dispense with line items 7 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 1, sponsored by President Reed and Alderman Vollmer, budget for fiscal year 2020 containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 2, sponsored by Alderman Coatar, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission pertaining to the zoning code Title 26, amending Chapter 26.08 of the revised code by adding a cross-reference in the definition section for marijuana-related uses, adding a new chapter to the zoning code Title 26 pertaining to the regulation of medical marijuana facilities and including sections on purpose, definitions, use regulations, site requirements for medical marijuana facilities, and containing a severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 3, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and Comptroller to enter into and execute the land lease agreement between the city and the United States of America Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration, granting to lessee certain rights and privileges in connection with the occupancy and use of premises containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 4, sponsored by Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance establishing a four-way stop site at the intersection of Garesche and Goodfellow, regulating all traffic traveling north, westbound, and southeastbound on Garesche at Goodfellow, and regulating all traffic traveling northeastbound and southwestbound on Goodfellow at Garesche, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 5, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property as indicated on District Map in City Block 1179 from B to Family Dwelling District to F Neighborhood Commercial District at 1500 through 04 Salisbury, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 6, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property as indicated on District Map in City Block 1880 from C Multiple Family Dwelling District to H Area Commercial District at 3614 and 3616 Code Brilliant and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 7, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map in City Block 3399 from F Neighborhood Commercial District to B Two-Family District at 1913 to 1925 East College and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 8, the number was not used in this session. Board Bill 9, sponsored by Alderman Arnowitz, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Department of Health to enter into and execute an agreement with St. Louis University and St. Louis University College for Public Health and Social Justice as part of Foundation for Health Grants to fund an academic health department upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment and to expend funds by entering into contracts or otherwise for grant purposes and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 10, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard and Clark Hubbard, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property as indicated on district map in City Block 4549 from B, Two-Family Dwelling District, and E, Multiple Dwelling District, to G, Local Commercial and Office District at 5505, 5535 through 55, and 5559 through 79 Delmore, and 713 through 27 and 731 Bill, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 11, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the city proposed amendment to the Charter of City of St. Louis to maintain the Board of Aldermen as a body of 28 aldermen representing 28 wards and preventing its reduction beginning December 31st, 2021 to a body of 14 aldermen representing 14 wards as called under Article 1, Section 3 of the City Charter, proving for election to be held for the voting on proposed amendment and manner of voting, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 12, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance repealing Section 1 of Ordinance Number 68605 and codified as 2.08.430 in the City Revised Code of Ordinance, which pertains to election rules and procedures relating to the payment of taxes by candidates for elective office in the city, and replacing said section of Ordinance 68605 with the new Section 1 requiring all candidates for elective public in the city to have paid in full at the time of their filing those taxes and bills for services set forth herein to provide evidence thereof in a sworn affidavit at said time. Board Bill 13, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the issuance of the City of St. Louis of its airport revenue bond, St. Louis Lambert International Airport, in an aggregated principal amount not to exceed $35 million in one or more series of part of $3.5 billion of bonds approved by the voters of the city in 1991 and 2003 to finance the cost of purchasing, extension, improvement, or enlargement of the airport, reimbursement for certain prior airport capital expenditures, the funding of capitalized interest, if any, and the issuance of the city of its airport revenue refunding bond, St. Louis Lambert International Airport, in an aggregated principal amount not to exceed $100 million and containing a severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 14, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name of Father Biondi S.J. Way, which shall begin at the intersection of Lindo and Grand and run south on Grand to the intersection of Grand and the eastbound entrance of ramp on Highway 44. Board Bill 15, sponsored by Alderman Coatar, an ordinance promoting the use of energy-efficient heating through the connection of the downtown steam distribution system, promoting the continual use of the downtown steam distribution system for any development project occurring downtown St. Louis, seeking municipal financial incentives, prohibiting the Clean Energy Development Board from approving financing for any project that would result in commercial building disconnecting from or no longer using the downtown steam distribution system. For heat, a portion of the net profits be remitted as SWMDC and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 16, sponsored by Alderman Coatar, an ordinance amending Ordinance Number 50258, which ordinance relates in part to the vacation of Russell from DeKalb to 2nd Street, which conditions authorizing the termination of the fire lane on Russell vacation in order that Soulard 2nd Street LLC or its successors and assigned may build a project on certain land located at 161 through 181 Trudeau. Board Bill 17, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance submitted to the qualified voters residing in the Central West End Southeast Special District, Business District as established on Ordinance number 63780, approved May 31st, 1996, amended in Ordinance number 64550, approved January 15th, 1999, and amended in Ordinance 68236, approved January the 16th, 2009, a proposal to extend the levy of tax on the real property located in said district in an additional 10 years and increasing the amount of such tax to an amount not to exceed 85 cents per $100 assessed valuation, submitting said proposal to voters of said district as a special election on August 6, 2019, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 18, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance approving the petition to establish the Newstead West Community Improvement District, establishing the Newstead West End Community Improvement District. Board Bill 19, sponsored by the following alderpersons: Spencer, Ingracia, Gunther, Green, Navarro, Arnowitz, and Rice. An ordinance requiring a citywide vote to approve any proposal aimed at or having the effect of privatizing the St. Louis Lambert International Airport by the city's renting, leasing, or transferring its control of the airport, either in whole or in part, pursuant to the Federal Aviation Administration Airport Privatization Pilot Program and the Modernization and Reform Act 2012, and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 20, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance repealing paragraph F of Section 2 of Ordinance 63780, approved May 31st, 1996, as amended in Ordinance 64550, approved January the 15th, 1999, and Ordinance 68236, approved January the 16th, 2009, and in lieu thereof, a new paragraph is enacted extending the period of time during which the Central West End Southeast Special Business District will be permitted to collect a tax within the boundaries of the district, and increasing the amount of tax to an amount not to exceed 85 cents per $100 of the assessed valuation of all real property within district, and to amend and restate the use for which additional revenue produced by such tax may be put to include cleaning, landscaping, maintenance, security, public safety, purchase and installation of public infrastructure, public transportation, administration, and contingency fund for such categories, containing effectiveness and emergency clauses. Board Bill 21, sponsored by Alderman Cone and Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance approved and recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of an operating lease agreement of the property known as West End Community Center between the City of St. Louis as lessor and Demetrius Johnson Charitable Foundation as lessee, with an emergency provision. Board Bill 22, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance pertaining to parking within 5347 Nottingham Parking District as establishing the location and restriction for curb parking in the restricted parking zone within the 5647 Nottingham Parking District, authorizing the placement of permit parking only signs within the district, and prohibiting the parking within the district of any vehicle which does not display the authorized permit, containing definitions, a penalty clause, and an emergency clause. Board Bill 23, sponsored by Alderwoman Middlebrook, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 1920 North Broadway. Board Bill 24, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance to provide for the borrowing of funds in anticipation of collection of tax payment levies by the city for deposit in its general revenue fund for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2019, and remaining uncollected, and other revenues remaining to be collected and deposited into the general revenue fund for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 25, sponsored by Alderman Gunther, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3230 Oregon. Board Bill 26, sponsored by Alderman Gunther, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2911 through 2915 Ohio. Board Bill 27, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance requiring the Board of Election Commissioners to post on its website the qualification and requirements that must be met by an individual in order to file declaration of candidacy for elected office in the city, and procedures for filing a declaration of candidacy which are codified in Chapter 2.08 of the City of St. Louis Revised Code of Ordinances, and to update said posting within 3 days following the effective date of any City of St. Louis ordinance or Missouri State statute which change or modify said requirements, rules, and procedures. Board Bill 28, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports to enter into and execute on behalf of the city the assignment and assumption of interest in dual custom agreements and consent of the City of St. Louis assignments, whereby the city consents to the assignment of Binational Gateway Terminal, LLC, to Brownsville International Cargo, of all assigners' rights, titles, interest in the dual custom agreements AO-353 between the city and dated January the 9th, 2015. Said assignment agreement was approved by the Airport Commission and is attached hereto as Attachment 1, containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 29, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Airport Commission and Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing the Director of Airports to approve and execute on behalf of the city to consent to change in ownership and control structure of Binational Gateway Terminal, LLC, substantially in the form as set out in Attachment 1 to this ordinance, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein, whereby the city consents to the change of ownership in Binational Gateway Terminal, LLC, the leasee, under the certain second restated and amended lease agreement AL-094, dated February the 14th, 2019, and authorized by City Ordinance Number 70909, approved February the 11th, 2019, between the city and Binational. As such, consent by the city is required in accordance with Section 1001 entitled Assignment of the Lease Agreement, providing that the provisions set forth in this ordinance will be applicable exclusively to the document provided or authorized by this ordinance and containing the severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 30, the number is not used in this session. Board Bill 31, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the issuance of delivery not to exceed an aggregated $17,259,000 plus issuance cost principal amount of tax increment revenue notes, Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4 of City Foundry St. Louis RPA2 redevelopment project, Series 20 AB of the City of St. Louis, prescribing the form and details of such notes and the covenants and agreements made by the city to facilitate and protect the payment thereof, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 32, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance authorizing the establishment of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council through the intergovernmental cooperative agreement by and between the city, the sheriff, the 22nd Judicial Circuit Court, the circuit attorney, the Missouri State Public Defender, and the director of Missouri Department of Corrections, authorizing the mayor to enter into the intergovernmental cooperative agreement with the respective party and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 33, sponsored by Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to make such changes in the present traffic pattern controlling traffic on Thrush in the 5200 block of Thrush between Theodore and Thekla, so that the reconfigured of the traffic pattern between and in place as a result of the changes directed by this ordinance are as follows, namely, Thrush 5200 block, traffic to flow one way northeast between Theodore and Thekla. Board Bill 34, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance submitted to the qualified voters of the City of St. Louis, proposed to revise Section 2 of Article 8 of the City of St. Louis Charter, which requires city employees to reside within the boundaries of the City of St. Louis, and thus allows said employees, except for city agency and department directors appointed by the mayor, to reside outside of the boundaries of the city, and providing for election to be held for voting on the proposed revision and the manner of voting thereat, for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Madam Clerk, place Board Bill 34 in Public Employees.
So noted.
Reference to committee.
To the HUD's Committee, Board Bill 2, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, and 31. To the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bill 3, 13, 19, 28, and 29. To the Streets Committee, Board Bill 4, 14, 16, 22, and 33. To the Legislation Committee, Board Bill 12 and 27. To Health and Human Services Committee, Board Bill 9. To Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 1, 17, 18, 20, and 24. To the Parks Committee, Board Bill 21. To the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bill 23, 25, and 26. To the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, Board Bill 11 and 32. And to the Public Employee Committee, Board Bill 34. That is the extent of reference to committee.
We will dispense with line items 13 through 19. Alderwoman from the 19th Ward, you recognize on courtesy resolutions. You recognize on the motion for the courtesy resolutions calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to adopt the first courtesy resolution.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 19th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderwoman from the 27th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
First reading resolutions.
Resolution 5, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad. The Board of Aldermen sets forth in the rules of the Board of Aldermen the standards of dress to be observed by the members of the board, its staff, and others present on the floor for the purposes related to the business of the Board of Aldermen.
Alderman from the 21st, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 5.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to withdraw resolution number 5.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Alderman. Madam Clerk, resolution number 5 has been withdrawn.
So noted. Resolution 6, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad. The Board of Aldermen oppose the unification of the City of St. Louis and St. Louis County via constitutional amendment.
Alderman from the 21st, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 6.
Mr. President, I move to place resolution number 6 in the Public Safety Committee.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 21st. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please assign resolution number 6 to intergovernmental.
So noted. Resolution 9, sponsored by...
Public safety.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
Resolution 9, sponsored by Alderman Roddy. Central West End Southeast Special Business District Tax Levy.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 9.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I request unanimous consent on resolution 9.
Hearing no objection, please proceed, Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This is simply a resolution asking for, well, I move to adopt resolution number 9.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Alderman, please proceed.
Thank you. I renew my motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 9. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That is the extent of first reading of resolution.
We'll dispense with line item 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Friday, May 10th, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I wanted to first announce that Treasurer Tashara Jones will be serving lunch right after the meeting in room 220. And I also wanted to invite all of my colleagues out to the 26th Ward tomorrow for the dedication of the boxing gym in beautiful Woe Community Center to Ben Stewart. And if you don't know who Ben Stewart is, briefly, he was served in the community for several years, but chairman of the Deacons Ministry at Cornerstone Baptist Church, 33-degree Mason, where he served for over 40 years. But what he did most was touched countless lives of boys in the community through his gift of boxing. The Spinks family, Joshua Temple, who actually lives in the 26th Ward and will soon be the cruiserweight champion of the United States. He wanted America. He wanted me to make sure I said that. So again, tomorrow at Wold Community Center at 1515 North Kings Highway, we'll be dedicating the newly renovated boxing gym to Ben Stewart. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Tomorrow at Dunbar School, which is across the street from Vashon High School, they're having a family friend picnic, and we're inviting a lot of the Dunbar alumni. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to see people come back to the neighborhood that attended Dunbar Elementary School and Vashon High School, and is being co-sponsored by the Vashon Alumni Association as well. So they'll be doing that from 10 to 2 p.m. And for physical locality, it's the corner of Garrison and Cass Avenue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to announce that the 17th Annual Mary Meacham Freedom Crossing Celebration will be Saturday, May the 4th from 12 to 5. This is free for all ages. You're welcome to come in costume or come as you are. They will have historical reenactments, local entertainment, art, goods, foods and drink for purchase, games and prizes for children, and education for all. There will also be a gospel choir from 12 to 2. And this will be, you can take Grand to Hall to Prairie to park at the levee and then shuttle to the site. So everyone please come out and enjoy a good time.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. While Sunday is Cinco de Mayo, when you're done with your Mexican celebration, stop by St. Ambrose Church. It's their annual La Festa for a little Italian celebration. It is a Catholic church, so we'll be gambling and alcohol. Thank you.
Alderman from the 14th.
I would like to remind people that not only can they celebrate Cinco de Mayo on Cherokee Street, Marisco's El Gato is heading up the celebration on Gravois and the 4,500 blocks of Gravois on Sunday, Cinco de Mayo Day, from noon to 9 p.m., dancing and all kinds of fun and fiesta. Okay?
All right.
Come on by in the 14th Ward and celebrate Cinco de Mayo after you cure your hangover from the Saturday Cinco de Mayo.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 28th. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to invite everyone to Porch Fest this weekend. It's tomorrow in the Skinkard of Oliver neighborhood from 1 to 5 p.m. This is a grassroots music festival. You just walk through the neighborhood. It's free. Travel from porch to porch, hearing different bands all afternoon. So please come out and join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've had lots to talk about Cinco de Mayo, but I would like to also say that the Alderwoman from the 20th and myself would like to invite everyone down tomorrow, May 4th, from 11 a.m. until 10 p.m. to Cherokee Street for the largest Cinco de Mayo celebration in St. Louis. We also have at 1:11 p.m. promptly the People's Joy Parade, where you'll be able to see some of your colleagues ride in a giant hamster wheel. So please come down.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to excuse the Alder people from the 3rd, 4th, 17th, the 22nd, and the 25th for necessary absence.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 10th and entertain a second on the motion, seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting until next week, which will be May the 10th.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 6th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, stand adjourned.